Welcome to the Times of India Lit Fest. I'm Devapriya and I am absolutely delighted to be in conversation today with Ma Anand Sheela. So, we are here to talk about Ma's new book, which is called By My Own Rules. It's a beautifully written book and absolutely honest. Um, and the best thing is that it provides a wonderful context to understanding uh, Ma Anand Sheela's life, because there are so many stories that tend to overshadow the real story of her life, her inner journey, which is documented so well in this book. My first question is that you've, of course, always lived by your own rules, and we will try and unpack that together a little bit. But what I found fascinating is that your parents were also people who lived by their own rules. They were both pioneers and mavericks of a sort. So maybe we begin our conversation by talking a little bit about the two of them. Your father was a Gandhian, a freedom fighter.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud to talk about them too. The love and training with correct values they had given us children, that was the best and only inheritance one should receive. And we received that. The parents themselves lived in front of our eyes the values they were giving us. Of course, in a negative moment, one can misunderstand, or when one doesn't want to accept the blame or something, then one can return the blame to parents. But I have to tell you, honestly, I had never had that opportunity. And I call it opportunity. I didn't have also that misfortune. And when you don't have misfortune, it is opportunity. And I'm so grateful to my parents. And I tell all young people, instead of blaming your parents for little things, remember that when parents had you or given you birth, they were also young and inexperienced. Mistake happened. Be generous towards your parents. Don't blame parents for everything. Reflect within. And for me, I am simply grateful that I had such divine parents.
How lovely. And it is, in fact, I think your father, who, when you were 16, took you for the first time to listen to Rajneesh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just want to tell us about that 16-year-old?
Yes, my father wanted us, all children, to gather as much as we can in terms of knowledge, where we could learn something new, something better. And because of my father's interest and the work he did with Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, he had contact with different intellectuals of the time, contemporary of Gandhi's. He lived among them, and they would visit from time to time, passing through Baroda. They would stay at times in our house. And during that time, we met all kinds of people. And Bhagwan was passing through Baroda. And my father said, we all are going to go listen to him. Because what you will learn there can be enough for 5 lifetimes. In those terms he spoke. And it was an experience of something that I cannot say how wide and bright it was, which had done something to me in that moment when I saw Bhagwan. What can I say? How can one win a jackpot? I won a jackpot through my father for introducing me to Bhagwan.
So your father was also a maverick in another way, that he sent you and your brothers and sisters to the United States for education, right? And when you and your sister, and I found that also very interesting, because here were you, two brown young women, going to the US at a time when it was still not very common for a large number of Indian students to go there, not like it became later. And that time when also the era of counterculture was on, the US, which was also had very conservative elements, was the conservative and the counterculture elements were clashing. What was that like to be in the United States at that time when you went as a student?
When I was part of student life, somewhere I got again lucky that I was in a small university and there were not massive demonstrations and things like that going on. But the awareness of flower culture had a lot to say. And in terms, flower culture had also influenced us in our time and given us the understanding of we are all the same. There's no difference. And my father fighting for freedom had big influence on me, where I think I write about it in my first autobiography, Don't Kill Him, how I was righteous about the Black
yes, absolutely.
population in USA.
Yes, that's a great story. Would you like to share that story about when you were a young waitress working in a little job at a restaurant?
Right. I was working as a waitress on a weekend, and it was a Jewish restaurant, Jewish owner. He was absolutely charmed by me, with my name being Sheela Silverman, and Silverman is a Jewish name.
Yes, yes.
So he was totally okay with me, had no problem. Plus, I have a mere wheat color skin, not absolutely dark. So that might have helped a little bit for his liking. We had when bill of the customer is over $75, we had to automatically put 10% or the 15% tips on it. There was a Black family came to celebrate their birthday and were placed on my table. And I served them very pleasantly, took care of them. I wanted them to have fun. And then when the bill came, my boss came to check, have I charged the percentage on it? So I said, but the bill is not over $75. I want you to charge them. I said, why? And he was obnoxious. He called them not with proper respect and said, we don't want such people coming to our restaurant. And I said, but this is a public place, restaurant. Everybody should be welcomed with the same terms and conditions. And he said no. So I said, okay, then I quit. And he said, okay, quit. I picked up my purse and I went out. And next day I went to I forget now the agent.
NAACP.
Yeah, NAACP, and filed a complaint. And after that, I have been told, and we also often went to this mall, so loads of Black people were entering this restaurant. But it was totally wrong. And I could not tolerate. And when, of course, my husband and my parents, when they found out, also my other family, I told them this story, they were all very proud of me.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, you know, on a lighter note, it was a little sign that that you could also resign and walk out, because you did that in a much more, you know, by then the stakes were much higher, and you were, you know, you had built truly, you know, spearheaded building the commune and the city of Rajneeshpuram. You were at the forefront of that. But when the time came to quit, you quit.
I did. And I fought with commitment against discrimination. It was a religious discrimination, what we had lived in Rajneeshpuram, in Bhagwan's community, with the fundamental Christians,
right,
and
right.
Republican who were set bent not to allow other culture to survive or exist.
In fact, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, Wild Wild West, when it was, you know, when Netflix shot it and
Wild Country,
all over the world, why Wild Country, why it sort of, you know, touched a chord, in addition to the sort of personal story, is that battle is ongoing, and perhaps today, because of the way the sort of, you know, the digital world is a lot more connected, that this battle between fundamentalists and those who wish to stand for freedom and to do something original of their own, that battle is still raging. There doesn't seem to have been any synthesis, right? Whether in the United States or elsewhere in the world, in our country now too.
You are absolutely right. And this is exactly why I say to mankind, please respect human rights. I beg every one of you, whoever is listening to me, respect human rights. This earth is made for all of us. And it is big enough for every one of us to exist comfortably. And do whatever you can against the discrimination.
Bigotry. Discrimination and bigotry. Anand Sheela, what I want to understand is, that Bhagwan Rajneesh's vision, the vision that he had in the early days, because you've written about it so much, that we understand that in the later years in the commune, you too were disillusioned and so on. But in the early years, what was that vision? Because that vision sometimes gets misunderstood, or people only want to talk about one aspect of it, which was sexual freedom. And that is the only thing everyone wants to fixate on. But what was the nature of that world that he had wanted to build, that you had wanted to build?
It was an utopia where all race, all kind, all color, all religion, everybody can live together with a simple thought in positivity and being themselves, being there for one another. This being there for one another is so important. And using each other's qualities and supporting each other's weaknesses create a community which exists harmoniously. It was such a noble, such a beautiful concept. And this concept had most visionaries, but it never came to fruition. And we got lucky, we worked hard, we were together in our efforts, we managed it, and it became a successful experiment that one could use it in a smaller way or the bigger way. I leave the same success here in a smaller way with selected group of people.
Right. In fact, I really want to talk about that that you were able to replicate the success in a sense, but it was also fascinating to me and very moving, because to me the most moving part of the journey is that on the one hand, let's say a year ago, you were running the city of Rajneeshpuram, you were handling all the troubles outside, you were raising money to run the commune and all the other work that the commune had to undertake. There were thousands of people living inside. You were raising money for Bhagwan's Rolls Royces as well, which had begun to bother you. And then after you left in 1985, the first job that you had after the stint in prison was you were being paid 10 francs an hour as a dog walker, right? To me, that was the most empowering moment of the story. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that part of the journey and how you built yourself up from that?
After the prison, I had to start somewhere. I didn't want to fail my parents' effort. And for me, it was so important that the parents are relaxed that I'm okay. And the only way I can be okay if I'm standing on my own feet, because they are the one who suffered my imprisonment bigger than me myself. because no parents want their children to be in prison. And they had seen our work, so for them it was even much harder to accept that I'm in prison. So the first job, I was able to manage to walk for 1 hour, dog walking. I had no idea of dogs, how to deal with it or anything. And I had to do, and it was a hilarious scene when I would walk with the dog, and the dog knew exactly how weak I am in commanding him. I can command a whole commune, how to go about. But this dog, my body was not ready to be commanded. I would beg him on the street, come, Bari, come, please, come. It was unbelievable, if you can picture it. And then there are cars driving by, rush hour. They have no tolerance for anything like this. They could not laugh at a humorable situation like this. They could have laughed at my stupidity, but that too they didn't manage. They were driving and yelling to get out of the road. But
Oh,
it
dear.
also shows
But
the acceptance of life. Whatever comes, do it 100% and with the same commitment. Of course, it took me a few days to learn about it, but.
And then the next job was that of a housekeeper, dog walker to housekeeper. You ran the commune, the city of Rajneeshpuram, over 16,000 acres, and then you were a housekeeper to an old couple. And to me, that is the wonder of your story, right? So do you want to tell us, Ma Anand Sheela, about how this new, after that you built a new kind of commune? Do you want to talk about that?
The logic behind working for this housekeeper, as a housekeeper to this old couple was, then I don't have to look for an apartment. I don't have to think of myself isolated alone. And they had a nice room to offer me to stay. The old man was a famous lawyer of the area also, with my luck. Mm-hmm. So if I had any doubts about my legal situation, he could shed light on it. So these were a few practical things.
And the dog was already your friend by then.
And dog was my friend already by then. And the old couple also became my friend. They were lovely old couple. They gave me time to adjust because till then, for 14 years, I had not done much housekeeping. So I had to get back in a rhythm, routine, and they allowed me all that. But there I became aware also how and what, if my parents need a place to stay and move them to old age home, and do's and don'ts, then I have to set up something of my own where I can be comfortable that it is correct where my parents are living. And I don't have to complain about it. If there is a problem, I have to complain to myself. So to suit my parents and suit me how I would care for my parents, that's what I set it up here. No
So
double
the
standard.
dream, right, right. So you imagined a home for, like a residence for the elderly, where your parents, you would be happy for your
To
parents to
keep
have
them.
stayed and
Yeah.
to keep them, right? And then, of course, that became such a wonderful idea. And the growth of first Matra Sadan and then Bapu Sadan, as you call them, and then it went. You had a branch in Vietnam,
And
in
Mauritius.
Mauritius. So that's a fabulous story. But also, it's also a lot of. It must have been very hard work, because you were doing it yourself. You were looking after the elderly on your own.
That's right. The first 7, 8 people, for them, I did everything. I cooked for them, cleaned them, I nursed them, I fed them, I went shopping for them. Whatever was needed for them, I did it. And they were, all of them were Alzheimer patient. So it wasn't a simple work. It was 24-hour works. And then people observed my care, word of mouth spread, and more people wanted to be part of our place. And just then I had the opportunity to rent a big villa. So I did and expanded. And after expanding it, I had no choice but to hire people to help me, because me alone was not possible. And then I started dealing with one illness to another. I did not say no to illness except for tetraplegia and drug issues.
Yes, yes, that's what you said. That addiction is very difficult, and you said.
Yeah, I do deal with the alcohol addiction, but drug addiction, I don't deal with it. Sometimes still over the years, after 32 years, I have an opportunity because somebody didn't tell me the truth, what the real problem is, and drug issues come. Then we deal with it also. But it's not my preference.
So there have been these different stages in your life, and you've lived them all by your own rules. Right? So now when you look back, and when you look back to the 14 years that you spent with Bhagwan, and you completely submerged yourself in that world, right? Now when you think of it, after these so many years, when you did all these other things, what do you think about that young woman at that time, who now so many of us have seen recordings, thanks to the Netflix series, little clips of? What do you think, and what do you feel for that young woman?
I say, the difference I can tell you, I was powerhouse then, active powerhouse, lightning, thunder, and I was trained for that from Bhagwan. Because for protection of the community, that strength was required to deter the problems. And now I'm like a dead volcano.
I wouldn't say dead.
there is no possibility of explosion here now in old age. But the commitment remains the same towards people, towards life, towards myself, and remembrance and gratefulness of loving parents and loving Bhagwan. The learning is all there.
When you think about Bhagwan now, your guru, is there any one story or one lesson that he taught that you hold on to more than others?
There are many, and one of my favorite one is, of course, it's a Zen story, but I had heard it from Bhagwan and learned from Bhagwan over that. And he says, in short, samurai goes to a Zen master to learn truth of life. Zen master verbally abuses this samurai, and samurai normally one doesn't abuse unless they want to have their head cut. And this Zen master did not care. He just went on abusing. Finally, samurai pulls his sword out, and master shouts at him, "Here opens the gates of hell." 1 second, samurai stopped, puts his sword back in the seat, and master laughs and says, "Here opens the gates of heaven." And why I think it is a very valuable lesson for me. I can create my own hell, and I can create my own paradise. And no matter where I have gone, I have created my own paradise. Near Bhagwan, I had my own paradise. Away from Bhagwan, also I have created my paradise here in Switzerland or Mauritius or the Vietnam.
When you came to India after 34 years, there was a short trip to Pune. How was that?
I was unaware of it until we arrived in Pune. I was told then that we're going to make a short stop there. They want to show how I feel about Pune, but for me, Pune is a city. Bhagwan is not there, Pune doesn't exist for me. Pune existed because Bhagwan was living there. Therefore, I was living there. We did pass by the Koregaon Park 17, the main entrance of Pune Ashram. And I was totally disappointed to see this 5 meter, 6 meter high black walls. Bhagwan's dream was freedom for all. That's what we had learned. Live in freedom. Why do they need these black walls? What are they trying to hide there? That was erupted in my heart. But it doesn't concern me, it's not me. I live here in paradise with Bhagwan.
Anand Sheela, when you think back to Rajneeshpuram, now do you think in hindsight that perhaps things that happened could have also been part of sort of an intelligence operation, that perhaps, even within the ashram, there were some elements who had been planted by intelligence agencies and so on, which led to this sort of, the fall was quite rapid. It all fell apart very quickly.
It is all possible. Republicans were very active against Rajneeshs. They had done this kind of situation with Waco, Texas. They had done similarly by Moon and few other people's name I forget. And I'm certain that it is possible. I mean, if you look at the politics today in Republican Party, you know how corrupt they are. Those days, this Mitch McConnell's and his gang were young people. I remember their names from those days already, some of them. So it is all possible. And I'm okay that we created a history. Bhagwan's knowledge, Bhagwan's vision was not wasted. And each one uses his vision and his knowledge for themselves, for their own purposes. But that's what life is.
Anand Sheela, I wanted to ask you one, for, as we sort of head towards the winding up of the conversation, there's one story from this book which really moved me. And also it was so simple, because you gave a little bit of spiritual advice, if I may interpret it that way, that you've talked about a mother who suffered from dementia and who was close to death, and her daughter who used to come and who used to help her and was a part of her life, but there was something between the two of them, and the daughter had not been able to resolve or forgive her mother completely. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that story, and perhaps on that?
It is, I write about just this one story, but I have seen it in number of deaths in our homes,
Residents,
where the family dispute or family unresolved events haunt the dying person. And the haunting is so severe that they cannot let go and enjoy this last moment for both parties, the living and the dying. And this sadness of person who dies is because they had not lived fully in harmony together. And this story is about this woman. Maybe the daughter was blaming mother for some events. I don't know the details of the events or the so, and she held grudge against mother, but she took absolute care of her mother. She looked a good home by bringing it to me. She didn't want her to go just to a standard old age home where sometimes people look like they're vegetating. And she would come every few weeks to visit Mama. And they would have good visit. But they were unable to resolve this knot that they had created between two of them. And Mother was full Alzheimer's. She could not talk. She had lost words with her illness. And then she's on deathbed. I see it on a daily basis. Her daughter also sees that she's suffering. And I said, hey, take Mama in hand and say, Mama, it doesn't matter. And she took my advice. I was happy. And that's exactly happened. She cried and cried, and tears were rolling from Mama's eye. And both, there were no words between them. Alzheimer had removed the words out, thank God. And they felt each other. And she died, and it was a lovely way to end a good life.
What a wonderful note that is.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter. The other things don't matter. What matters is,
Right.
is the moment. And if in the moment there is love, we have lived.
It happens. It happens. When love happens, death and life has no meaning, or they both become one.
When love happens, death and life have no meaning. They both become one. I think that's a wonderful note on which to end this session. But I'm sure, I hope you will all go buy the book and read it. There are many more wise stories in it. Thank you, Ma Anand Sheela, for this wonderful conversation.